You have 5 days to prepare. Hey, everybody, we're going to talk about what's going to be happening in 5 days, the big changes that are likely to affect millions of U.S. consumers. And we got a ton of other financial news, economic news, and more to get caught up on. Welcome back to the channel. We missed yesterday, so I missed you guys. Hope you missed me. I really miss you. Thanks for being here. A ton to talk about. We're going to get into the stock market, more layoffs, the cost of living, of course, this insane housing bubble, the cost of insurance, and how homeowners are starting to buckle under the pressure of these high costs, and costs that are not only high, but getting higher as we go along. Let's go ahead and start right here. And we'll go back to this article that we talked about a few weeks ago at the end of January. Over 6 million Americans are late on their mortgage payments. Now, a lot of influencers and economic creators, stuff like that, people like me, are talking about this, and they're digging deep into the numbers. And what we're finding is that it's much worse than the 6 million that are actually late on their mortgage payments. When you combine that with the number of households that are financially strapped due to rents, the number is pretty shocking. Let's take a look. All right, and here's how they lay it out over at Newsweek here. More than 6.6 million households have fallen behind on their mortgage payments, a study from Deeds.com. In addition, 9.4 million renters are struggling to make their monthly mortgage payments. People, this is crazy. Now, what's going to happen with all the layoffs and the drop in consumer spending, which could snowball into more layoffs? Remember, when people pull back on spending or when people lose their jobs in large numbers, like we're seeing right now out of the federal layoffs, then more people lose their job because a lot of jobs are already dependent on people spending money, right? So when people lose their jobs, they're going to spend a lot less money, and that's going to create a snowball effect and a lot more jobs being lost. But back to housing here, some of the worst states, we've got Mississippi, the highest number of late payments with a whopping 15% of households. But for renters, 21% who are having difficulty making their payments. In Illinois, also a very high percentage, nearly 14% of households, 24% delinquent, according to a study here. 14% in Delaware, renters and owners were behind on their household payments, while Wyoming had about 12% of all residents facing delinquencies. Now, we've seen high numbers like this for a while now, and it seems like people continue to find ways to get by. We're not seeing a mass explosion of foreclosures, a mass explosion of evictions. Of course, we had a lot of protections over the past 4 years. 5 years now, that kept people in their homes. Now, most of those protections have evaporated over the past 1 or 2 years. So now we're starting to see the acceleration of these numbers to the upside, right? So it's no coincidence that the protections expired. Some are actually still in place. I was reading some articles. Some cities still have eviction moratoriums, believe it or not, 5 years after the health crisis. Some cities are still doing this, but mostly like 90+%, they're done with the protections, and therefore we're seeing these numbers get much worse at a much more rapid pace. All right, and the number of layoffs continues to increase, especially among the federal workforce. And we've got a statistic out here out of USA Facts. The government employs around 3 million people, and that makes it the nation's 15th largest workforce, right? So you have mega employers like Walmart and others, Amazon now, but the government is one of the big players, folks. 3 million people, and how many of these jobs are going to be cut? I mean, we've got Elon Musk out there holding an axe, talking about he's going to make more cuts. And to me, this is just getting really, really weird. It's interesting, but really, really weird. And it's actually even hurtful to some of the people that are losing their jobs, right? People that have gotten these layoff notices, they're on social media, a lot of them. I mean, hundreds. I came across hundreds of different videos of people that got laid off, and a lot of them are very hurt, that look at this guy, he's right here. Elon's out there making it look like a joke with the chainsaw, cutting jobs. What they're saying is cutting waste and basically fraudulent spending in some cases. And we're going to see things get even more interesting. it's interesting to me that the way they're handling this. I mean, some people really disapprove of it. Some people are cheering. They say they want more of it. But think about if it was you or a loved one that was losing your job. Would you think it was so funny? Well, hopefully, if the economy is as strong as we're being told, as we've been told over the past many years, all these federal workers can go out and get other jobs because the economy is strong, according to what we've been told over many years by the bankers, the central bankers, etc., the talking heads. But something that's very interesting is this. DOGE will use AI to assess the response of federal workers who are told to justify their jobs via email. So if you didn't see that report or if you haven't heard it elsewhere, federal employees were told to send an email in explaining what they got done over the past week or so to justify their job. So they have to explain in an email what they did. And if it's not assessed to be enough or that the job is essential, then they could possibly get laid off. They will likely get laid off based on what we've seen. But look at this. They're going to be using AI to assess the response of federal workers. When you have 3 million federal employees, as we just talked about, who has time to sit there and go through millions of emails, right? You're going to have to hire a whole bunch of people, and that's just the opposite of what they want to do. They don't want to hire more people. They're trying to get rid of people. And are you going to have enough people to read millions of emails? Of course not. So now they're going to be using AI. And essentially AI is going to assess the keywords in the text of the email. And is AI going to make a fair decision on if these people are essential? And it also passes the blame. It shifts the blame or the finger pointing. So what they could say is AI determined it. They could say it wasn't this guy's fault. It wasn't his fault or her fault. It was AI that did it. So you can't really blame anybody except for the one who decided to use AI. But who is this, right? Is this all Elon? What other people are making these decisions? Is this just one man's whim as far as like what he thinks is best? And now he runs pretty much one of the biggest workforces in the U.S. This is crazy, folks. I mean, maybe this will make things better. Maybe not. I mean, people have various opinions on this, and it's kind of divided, right? Some people say this, again, people say this needs to be done. Some people are out there laughing about it. Other people are literally crying. We played a couple of videos just in my last report of people that are putting themselves out there in social media. Literally, one girl, she was starting to tear up, and she looked like she was crying when she was talking about losing her job. All right, now back to this AI assessment of the responses from the federal workers. The deadline was actually midnight of the 25th, so that's rapidly approaching. The information will go into an LLM, large language module, or model rather, an advanced AI system that looks at huge amounts of text data to understand, generate, and process human language. The sources said the AI system will determine whether someone's work is mission critical or not. So what's the mission and who decides what's critical? What's going to be AI? Well, who programmed the AI to decide what's critical, folks? This is crazy. Is this the future? And this is just maybe a small glimpse into the future of everyone's future. A small glimpse, because this type of thing could be used to cut corners or to cut costs and to cut staff. Again, instead of having people reading through millions of emails, it's going to be AI. And are we going to have an AI police force? I mean, we're already seeing RoboCop type of stuff, from whatever that movie came out. RoboCop was that 30 years ago. This could be expanding, folks, and it's, we've said AI was going to expand. Well, this is very interesting the way they're using this. Now, some of the individuals that are behind this are saying, well, it's more than just a response via email. It's the fact to see that if anyone even responds at all, because what they're saying is a lot of these jobs, no one's even there. They're saying that some of these people are not even at their desk working, that they're just getting a paycheck and they're not being accounted for because they're remote. Some remote jobs, you have to be on the phones and they can track you because you're taking phone calls, you're talking to customers, and you have a camera on you. But they're saying a lot of these jobs that are being looked at to be cut, there's no type of tracking or tracing like you would normally see with the remote jobs. So it's going to be very interesting to see how it all works out. I don't think any of us know exactly the magnitude of what's going to be happening here, but we can see that things are definitely getting wild and seem to be getting crazier every day, don't they? All right, folks, into the main topic here. 5 days and counting from the time I'm recording this to when the tariffs are going to be implemented on Mexico and Canada. Remember, back at the beginning of February, it was going to be a 30-day pause. Well, that 30 days is going to be coming up in about March 2nd, which gives us about 5 days or so, depending on when you're watching this video, but 5 days from when I'm recording this. And many people are out there, and economists included, saying U.S. consumers better brace because these tariffs are going to cause prices to rise very dramatically and very quickly. Now, will something else happen between now and then to move it forward, where they're going to delay them again because of some agreement or some discussions or negotiations? Anything's possible. Look what we've seen happen so far. But it's very interesting that we're being warned about these higher prices possibly going to be hitting very, very soon. And the current administration came out and said we're basically on time, and it seems that things are moving along very rapidly. Also said, quote, the tariffs are moving forward on time, on schedule, unquote. Now, AP News cites the following. Most economists say the cost of the taxes could largely be borne by consumers. I agree with that. Retailers and manufacturers such as auto companies that source globally and rely on raw materials such as steel and aluminum are balking at the tariffs at 25%. The Mexico president appealed that her administration would reach an agreement with the U.S. government before the deadline. So they're possibly talking about another agreement before these are implemented. So we're going to see how this plays out, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on here. All right, folks. Now let's transition into a little bit here. The U.S. consumer, and as you probably know if you've been on this channel or other channels similar to mine, that consumer spending is about 70% of what's looked at as economic growth. That's the gross domestic product, and that's consumer spending. Mostly it's about 70% of that. So obviously credit cards are a very important role because we know that, again, 70% of people, the same number, 70% living paycheck to paycheck, are reliant on borrowed money to keep spending. What we're finding out is a bigger portion of spending is done by the top 10% than we previously thought about. This is out of Marketplace, folks. Look at this. Higher income Americans drive bigger share of consumer spending, folks. This is crazy. Take a look at this. And it goes on to cite what we talked about here many times, and I just laid it out for you. The American consumer is the beating heart of this economy, accounting for almost 70% of U.S. GDP. So there's, again, for those of you that say that I'm fake or making up stuff or doom and gloom or just making seem like it's worse than it is, there's another piece of data here out of Marketplace saying it's 70%. That's the real number. But it turns out in recent years that the spending has been increasingly driven by a smaller group of people. In fact, according to recent analysts from Moody's for the Wall Street Journal, households with top 10% incomes that make $250,000 a year or more account for nearly half. Let me enlarge that. Half of all consumer spending, folks. So it's much worse than even I thought. Right? I've never seen this particular statistic. We knew about the 70% living paycheck to paycheck. We knew the 70% of the GDP growth, or GDP in general, was driven by consumer spending, and most of that was borrowed money. But we didn't know that the spending that we did see was nearly half by the top 10%. So Bezos go out and buys another yacht. Zuckerberg buys another underground bunker in another state. All the spending by the top 10% is a big driver of this, folks. So what if it wasn't for the top 10%? I mean, things would look even worse than they look now, and it's already 70% struggling living paycheck to paycheck. How much worse would it be if it weren't for the mega wealthy propping up the spending, right? It's very, very interesting, I think. All right, let's move along here. Back to the job cuts here out of the government here. The administration cuts have now reached the FDA in food safety, medical devices, and tobacco products. Now, many people are pointing to these cuts as being very dangerous, and some are saying it's leading to more things like this. Look at this, an outbreak. Nutritional shakes recalled after listeria infection kills 12 people and hospitalized dozens dating back to 2008. So people against these federal job cuts are saying, well, things like this are now going to get worse because the FDA, if you cut the number of people there, you're going to see more outbreaks, more infections, and in this case, listeria, stuff like that. I've seen these reports seem like they've come out every few weeks where there's an outbreak, there's a recall. If you bought this from Costco, take it back. If you bought this from this store, take it back. I mean, there's been so many, I can't even think of any one of them because there's been so many. I know lettuce, carrots, canned sardines, I think maybe last month we talked about that. I mean, hundreds of different recalls and outbreaks and dangerous food items that had to be recalled. But people are saying it's going to get worse if you cut these jobs out of these agencies, including the FDA. I mean, let me know what you think about all this. Will it get worse? Or is it already so bad there's no way it could get worse, even with more job cuts? Right, moving on here, folks. Out of Bloomberg, Goldman Sachs says U.S. households are likely to pay another $170 a year if the oil tariffs are imposed. So $170 a year doesn't seem like that much. Divide that by 12 months. You're only talking about, what, $12 a month, something like that? I was close. 170 divided by 12, $14, a little over $14 a month extra that people could be paying for the higher price of gasoline, in this case with the higher price of oil. And let's see here, it would mean a cost equivalent to $170 per household. So the tariffs. But according to the administration that's in power right now, we're going to drill, and prices are going to come crashing down. Will we see prices come crashing down? Well, with the number of people getting laid off, that could be definitely a deflationary force. But folks, here is the truth, and I'm not trying to bash, your favorite person or your favorite group or favorite political party or the agenda that you may have or that you may be a backer of. If they really wanted to make it more affordable for people, right? Let's just look at the housing costs again, housing bubble, cost of living with housing, home prices. All they would have to do is stop companies and corporations from buying homes. And that could be done via a signature, sign it out of line, right? An EO can be put in, just like all the dozens of other ones that we've seen. They could do that. If they really wanted to bring down the cost, they could do that. And that would make home prices, and no one knows exactly, but I would say it would be at least a 50% drop in home prices if you stop corporations and big money, super big money. In some cases, it's multi-billion-dollar companies coming in, buying tens of thousands of homes. And we've talked about the big ones here, the big players, Blackwater, Invitation Homes, and others that literally own tens of thousands of homes. And in some states like California, they own half of homes. We're talking about the home ownership rate. In California, it's about 50%, meaning the other 50% are owned by some sort of landlord, and many of those are corporate entities. So all you have to do is put a stop to that, and home prices would come down. So ask yourself, right? And I'm not saying that you're bad or wrong, but ask yourself, if you really think they're trying to help us or help people in general, why wouldn't they do that? Why wouldn't they put that in place? Or would it do more harm than good? Because then the rest of the economy would come down with the lower home prices, because then your tax base starts eroding because home prices are lower. And then the cost of other properties goes down, because when you look at comparables, when home prices tumble, other people trying to sell their home now can't get as much for their home. So it's a snowball effect, because you're looking at comparables and how it affects the broader market. So is that why they're not doing it? Right? Maybe that's why. Maybe that's why they're not doing it, but they're really trying to help people. So maybe I'm misinterpreting that. Again, what do you think down in the comments? Let's talk about this. Let's have the discussion. All right, moving along again here. Let's talk about this topic here that's trending on social media of people doing a blackout on February 28th. And what they're saying is February 28th, the last day of February, no Amazon, no Walmart, no fast food. So they're saying that this is going to send a signal of what people can accomplish or what people can do to impact costs. So I don't really think it's going to work, folks. One day of not spending at these companies is not going to make a dent or a noticeable dent for there to be any impact. February 28th, economic blackout. John Schwartz, founder of the People's Union USA, is urging Americans to boycott all major retailers. All right, so not just Amazon, Walmart. That means no Costco. But the problem is major retailers are the bulk of where people shop at now. The nationwide protest comes amid rising prices on everything from gas to groceries, including eggs. It's similar to social media-fueled economic efforts that have cropped up online in recent months, including the No Buy 2025 challenge against overconsumption. Well, we've seen how that worked out so far, right? Prices went up. Remember, inflation ticked back up, even with this No Buy 2025 thing that a few people, is it 100? Is it 1,000? I mean, nobody knows how many people are actually taking this to heart. Is it 10,000, right? I doubt it. I think people are going to wake up on the 28th and forget all about it, and you're going to see the drive-thrus at the restaurants. You're going to see the parking lots full at the stores, at the large grocery stores, the large retailers. I don't think you're going to notice any difference, and I don't think it's going to have an impact on it. But it is nice that people are actually thinking about somehow maybe fighting back against these high prices. But then again, is it the retailers that are causing the high prices, or is it the overall cost of everything that the retailers are just passing along to consumers? In other words, boycotting the retailers is going to do zero good, and I think that's possible. All right, folks, a couple more things before we get out of here today. People saying that I'm full of just bad news. Folks, this is just my honest opinion and assessment, right? I'm not trying to be positive, I'm not trying to be negative, just being honest with you guys. Here's something positive, though. Apple to open AI server factory in Texas as part of a $500 billion, wow, it's half of $1 trillion, U.S. investment. So does Apple see the cost of labor coming down here in the U.S., or does Apple just see that the tariffs are going to be too much, even though you have to pay workers in the U.S. a lot more than you would in some other country, that it's still going to be worth it to open up here in the U.S.? So there's some positive news for jobs coming back to the U.S. Well, we see a lot of other jobs and big names, big companies like Apple coming back, bringing jobs back to U.S. shores. All right, people, thanks for being here. I'm going to wrap it up with this. We've been covering these things for a while, and to me, it always seems like that we're on the verge of something massive, and you could argue that we've already seen massive things already happen with all the wildness and craziness. A lot of it we just talked about today, it's already happening, and it's happened. But where does this lead to? I continue to think it's going to get worse before it gets better for most people. But then again, look at the top 10%, right? They're banging it. They're doing good. They're hitting it out of the park, so to speak. They're making up, the top 10% makes up now for nearly half of all consumer spending. So this is what we talked about, the wealth transfer, folks. The wealth being transferred up to the top 10%, the people that work with the money and around the money. But what kind of transformation are we going to see now that all this money is going to stop going out with the cuts, the DOGE cuts, the U.S. aid spending now being reined in? And how's that going to impact the broader economy? What if we find out that a lot of this money that was sent out ended up somehow in the stock market? And what if that was a big driver for the stock market? And what if a lot of the top 10%ers spending a lot of money somehow benefited from all that aid that was going out, right? You know how they send it out, and then special interest groups get it, and then it comes back to some of the people, some of the leaders here in the U.S., and they end up very wealthy. Well, we're going to see how it plays out, folks, and things are moving very rapidly. So we're going to keep an eye on it, and like to hear your comments again down in below this video, down in the comment section, and come back for more. Make sure you're subscribed, people. Subscribe button, where is it? Right here? Am I pointing to it? Right? There's supposed to be an on-screen subscribe button. Is it there? Let me know. Is it below my finger? Thanks, everybody, for being here. As always, keep stacking. Bye for now.